This is Dr. David Allen coming to you on the television program People Helping People. Our country, particularly Nassau, is going through a massive social fragmentation process. How do we know that? Well, just follow the murder rate. From 2011 to 2014, our murder rate has gone up exponentially. That's an epidemic. That's a serious situation. But anytime your murder rate goes up exponentially, it means that your culture or your society is going through social fragmentation. What we've done in the past 6 years is to try to work towards socialization by establishing group therapies in different parts of Nassau. We now have 21 group therapies, and they're called families. Family simply means this, that when I share my authentic story with you and you listen, a powerful healing bond develops. So in Nassau right now, we have 300 people meeting each week in families. Our goal this coming year is to get up to 600 to 1,000 people. And I believe if I can reach 1,000 people in the next year and a half to two, we can work to re-socialize Nassau. We have the research to show that we can reduce violence, reduce anger, reduce revenge, increase self-esteem, increase forgiveness. But this work is impossible unless you realize we're part of the global village. You know, sometimes we as Bahamians are xenophobic, but you cannot do a complicated research project unless you get brilliant people from across the world to help you. And I make no apology that in order to do the work I need to do to help my country, my hands are being held up by some very, very bright people from around the world, whether it be in England, Canada, and North America. With me are some of those people today. I have with me Miss Sherry Tabb. Sherry has been with me for years. She's taken my ideas and projected them. She helped me to develop them. She thought about them. She's visited here. She helped me come to Canada, to the States, and she's helped me to develop the program. And she has then brought a very famous professor, Professor Alexis Abernethy, from Fuller Theological Seminary, who is a world authority on group therapy. She's here to help us prime our program and develop it. And I'm going to ask Sherry just to introduce Alexis and say hello, because I want to thank you both for being here, because without your help, in our little country, we're going through a real rough time. And we need help in order to get this country going right. If not, our culture is in serious trouble. Thank you for being here.
Well,
Sherry.
David, Dr. Allen, thank you for having me and for having Alexis, Dr. Abernethy, to be here. It's really a privilege for us to join you in what you're wanting to do and how the impact of the family and what the impact of the family is doing to this country. I've known you for a long time, and I've always felt a pull in my heart to want to help.
Well, you were my boss in Washington.
We won't talk about that. It's all right. That was in the 90s, a long time ago. But, you know, I've always known you to be a genuine and authentic healer, and someone who I admire and appreciate as someone who follows their heart and who genuinely wants to help people of all types, all races, all levels, to really go into their heart and to experience that healing. I have as we know, I have a vision business. My husband and I have the Herzig Eye Institute in Toronto, and it's all about vision. As people know, when you have bad vision, or your vision is out of focus, it's very difficult for your quality of life to be where you want it to be. And one of the things that I've appreciated about Dr. Allen is that he has clarity of vision, not only for himself, but for this country. And it has been a real honor and privilege for him to share that with us and for us to be able to bring our resources to help him. And one of the things about vision is that without clarity of purpose, it's very difficult for focus to happen. And we in this little band of helpers here want to help bring some of that to the table. And I just appreciate the opportunity that we have to help. And in that vein, I have come across Dr. Alexis Abernethy, who's with us today. And she is one of the foremost authorities, as Dr. Allen has said, on group therapy, on psychology, on the integration of faith and our psychology. And she comes from a very well-trained background. She has her master's degree from Berkeley, her PhD from Berkeley, did her undergraduate at Howard University in Washington, D.C., and has a career that has been tracking with wellness and bringing life-changing resources to both individuals and groups. And she's with us here today. The reason that I wanted to introduce Dr. Abernethy to Dr. Allen is because I believe that they both have a very special and timely calling. They both have tremendous faith. They have a sense of calling, and they have personal skills that I think are timely to help this crisis that is brewing, both here in Nassau and in the United States and Canada. And I'd like to introduce Dr. Abernethy to you to let her share her story. And I think that you'll be inspired and hopefully motivated to understand more about what's happening and what we can do about it. Dr. Abernethy?
Thank you, Sherry. Thank you for your kind introduction. And it's been such a pleasure getting to know you and working with you. And you introducing me to Dr. Allen has been wonderful. We have not known one another for long, but the connection has been very deep. And I am so excited about the work that you're doing, the difference that you're making in people's lives on the ground. And the fact that the power of group is catalyzing this in such an important way, that is phenomenal. And that you're doing research on this, you see the change. I've witnessed some of the changed lives, but then to know that there's research that's also indicating and documenting this change, that's a powerful combination. So I will continue as we discussed. I'll share a little bit of my story and then talk more about some of my thoughts about group therapy. I'm originally from Annapolis, Maryland. My parents and grandmother from the Carolinas, South Carolina, my mother and grandmother, and my father from North Carolina. I am a preacher's kid, and my grandfather was also a preacher, United Methodist preacher. So that was very powerful in forming me, both in growing up in the United Methodist Church, but my parents were music teachers as well as musicians. So there was always music in the house, which very powerfully influenced me from an early age, as well as the demonstration of a living faith. But probably the most powerful influence for me was the faith of my grandmother, Sadie Marilla Young Thomas. And she lived with us 9 months out of the year, had her own home in Camden, South Carolina, but was there with us to help nurture the family, myself and my two brothers. And what my grandmother demonstrated was not only a commitment to doing what was important in terms of the Christian faith, but her being, the way she related to us, the way she cared and loved us was just so powerful. And so one of my areas of research, the main area, is spirituality and health. One way that I think about that is I'm really trying to understand this deep and abiding faith that my grandmother reflected. In terms of healing, in terms of change, that can be such a powerful influence. So there are different research labs that I have. That one is spirituality and eating disorders, another spirituality and cancer screening, and the final one is experience of spirituality and health-related outcomes. But that lab focuses on studies of worship and how worship contributes to change and transformation. But back to my early story. So My parents, growing up in Annapolis, Maryland, they were very deeply committed to our education. So we ended up going to a school that was just 2 miles away from where we lived, Key School. It's a private school, cost a lot of money, so much so that my mother didn't even have a sofa in our home until we were in adolescence. But they put the money in things like our piano lessons, and especially mine, and our education. Those were their priorities. Well, I got a classical education, which meant I learned French from 1st grade through 9th grade. I studied Greek for 3 years, and most importantly, I learned how to think. I wasn't trying to memorize facts. They were encouraging us to think for ourselves. That was such a powerful foundation. So then when I went to Howard, that was also a place where I learned to think critically and analytically. And the school where I was, a private school, was predominantly white. My brothers, I only have 2, we made up 1/3 of the black population of that school. So while that was wonderful educationally, it did make me question a little bit some things from an ethnic identity standpoint. So going to Howard was so powerful because there I saw people of African descent from all over the world and saw how there were folks that were contributing in so many different ways, different fields, but it was also nurturing to see the intelligence. The intelligence. I knew my parents and grandmother were smart, but to see really smart people of African descent coming there for college as well as graduate school was so powerful for me. And then I took a class that was, the main book was Chancellor Williams' The Destruction of Black Civilization. From that book, I understood my ancestors were scientists, engineers. The pyramids today are a testimony to that. So I knew that my ancestors were musicians and talented artists, but I did not know that the blood of scientists runs through my veins.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
That insight. And you know, Alexis, as you mentioned your grandmother, it seems that grandmothers and grandfathers stand at the pinnacle of life.
Yes.
They can see the furthest into the future and the furthest into the past.
Yes.
And somehow your family took their meager means and put it toward your education.
That's right.
And hence today, you're a leading professor in the world. We're going to take a break and be right back.